What happens when America's sweetheart, Kelly Clarkson, walks into what should have been a lighthearted morning interview and walks out of it mid-broadcast? What began as a routine appearance on the Today Show quickly turned into one of the most uncomfortable moments of Kelly's career. A live television disaster that left viewers stunned and producers scrambling behind the scenes. This is the story of how a simple question about her personal life spiraled into a confrontation so tense, so unexpected, that Kelly Clarkson walked off the Today set, leaving host Creig Melvin speechless and NBC executives in total panic. If you want to see exactly how this shocking moment unfolded from start to finish, make sure to subscribe. And let me know in the comments what you think really caused Kelly to snap. The morning begins. The day started like any other inside NBC's New York studios. Kelly Clarkson, fresh off another successful season of her daytime talk show, was booked for a short, friendly segment with Craig Melvin. She was there to talk about her new album, her upcoming tour, and her ever-growing success as a TV host. The mood was upbeat, the crew relaxed, and Kelly, as always, was all smiles. She greeted everyone warmly, joked with the makeup team, and chatted casually with producers. Her easy charm filled the studio. Craig, well prepared as usual, reviewed his cue cards, excited to sit down with one of America's most beloved entertainers. When the cameras started rolling, the energy was pure morning show perfection. Bright lights, big smiles, and that familiar Today Show polish. The interview starts. Strong Craig opened with warmth and enthusiasm. "Kelly, it's always such a pleasure to have you here. You've been absolutely killing it. The talk show, the new album. Tell us about the inspiration behind it." Kelly lit up instantly, diving into the story behind her music. How her recent experiences shaped the lyrics. How each song marked a new chapter in her life. She was animated, authentic, and clearly in her element. For the first several minutes, everything was smooth. Craig laughed at her jokes. Kelly laughed right back. It was the kind of segment that makes morning TV look effortless. Then the tone shifts, but then... Craig leaned forward just a bit. "Now, Kelly, your fans are always curious about your personal life." He began with that practiced charm. "You've been open about your divorce and how it's shaped you. How are you handling everything now? Are you seeing anyone special?" It sounded innocent enough, the kind of question every celebrity expects. But something changed. Kelly's smile didn't fade completely, but there was a flicker, a pause just long enough for the audience at home to sense it. "You know, Craig," she began carefully, "I'm in a really good place right now. Focused on my kids, my work, just taking life one day at a time. That's what's best for me." Her tone was polite, but it was also final. The push too far Craig didn't seem to catch it. Or maybe he did, and pressed anyway. "That's great to hear," he said, smiling. "But there have been some rumors lately about you and a certain someone. Any truth to that?" Kelly's face hardened just slightly. "I prefer to keep my private life private, Craig. My fans understand that." It was a calm boundary, one any seasoned interviewer should have recognized. But Craig kept going. "I totally get that," he said lightly. "But come on, give us just a little hint. What makes Kelly Clarkson happy these days, outside of work?" Kelly's jaw tightened, her hands clasped together in her lap. The live camera caught it all. The faint smile, the shift in posture, the tension simmering just beneath the surface. And then, with a small exhale, she said quietly, "What makes me happy? What makes me happy," Kelly said evenly, "is being able to come on shows like this and talk about my music and my career without having every corner of my personal life dissected for entertainment value." Her voice was calm, but the chill beneath it was unmistakable. The tension in the studio thickened instantly. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances. Even the air seemed to hum with discomfort. Creig, however, either missed the signal or chose to ignore it. "Kelly," he said with a polite laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes, "I think you might be reading too much into this. We're just having a friendly conversation here. Your fans care about you as a person, not just a performer." Kelly's eyes flashed, just for a second, with something dangerously close to anger. But she didn't raise her voice. "I appreciate that," she said, measured and composed. "But caring about someone doesn't entitle you to every detail of their private life." The warmth that had filled the studio minutes earlier was gone. Now it felt cold, sharp, like everyone was holding their breath. Creig's smile tightened. "I'm not asking for every detail," he countered, his tone slipping toward defensiveness. "I'm asking basic questions. This is what public figures expect when they do interviews. It's part of the job." Kelly's face flushed, her calm exterior finally cracking. "What I signed up for," she said, voice hardening, "was to promote my album and talk about my work, not to justify my personal choices or feed gossip for entertainment." The control room camera operators kept filming, but even they could sense it. This wasn't a friendly morning chat anymore. It was a standoff, the breaking point. Creig hesitated, clearly rattled but unwilling to retreat. "Kelly, I think you're being a little defensive," he said, trying to steady his tone. "I'm just doing my job, asking questions our viewers want answered. You've been open about your personal struggles before. Why is this suddenly off limits?" Kelly's jaw tightened. She gripped the arms of her chair. "There's a difference," she said, her voice slicing through the tension, "between choosing to share something to help people and being pushed to talk about things you're not ready to discuss. I thought you'd understand that difference." The room was dead silent now. Crew members stared at the floor. No one dared move. But Creig pushed on, trying to regain control. "Look," he said, forcing a smile, "I respect your privacy. But you have to admit, when you put yourself out there as someone who talks openly about life and relationships, people are naturally going to be curious about your story." Kelly leaned forward slightly, her tone low and deliberate. "So because I create a space for my guests to be honest, that means I've given up the right to have my own boundaries." "That's not what I'm saying," Creig insisted, clearly flustered. "I'm just saying that when you build a brand around being relatable, people want to know the real you." Kelly's brand Kelly exhaled slowly, gathering herself. Then she met his gaze, steady and unwavering. "My brand," she said firmly, "is built on being genuine, when I choose to be. It's built on respect and authenticity. It's not built on handing my personal life over to be picked apart for clicks and gossip." By now the tension was suffocating. A producer off camera whispered frantically into a headset. Someone mouthed, "Wrap it up." But Creig didn't move. Instead, he leaned in one last time. "I understand your position," he said carefully. "But I have to be honest. When you react like this to simple questions, it's going to make people wonder what you're trying to hide." The words hung in the air like a spark in a room full of gas. Kelly froze. Her eyes darkened. And when she finally spoke, her voice was calm. Terrifyingly calm. "What I'm trying to hide?" she repeated. "Creig, what I'm trying to do is protect some sense of normalcy for my children and myself. I'm trying to have relationships that aren't torn apart by speculation. I'm trying to live as a human being who happens to be famous, not a famous person who's forgotten how to be human." Creig swallowed, realizing too late he'd crossed a line. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the studio lights seemed to dim under the weight of what had just happened. "You want to know what I'm hiding?" "Kelly, I didn't mean to suggest—" "No, let me finish," Kelly cut in, her voice rising just enough to command the room. "You want to know what I'm hiding? The studio froze. I'm hiding the fact that sometimes I cry in my car after interviews like this, she said, her voice trembling but unwavering, because no matter what I do, I can't win. If I share too much, I'm accused of oversharing for attention. If I keep things private, I'm called secretive or cold. I'm hiding the fact that my kids sometimes ask me why strangers on the internet think they have the right to comment on our lives. Her words hit like a gut punch. Crew members shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware they were witnessing something far more personal than television was meant to show. Craig's face softened. He looked shaken now. Less like a host, more like a man realizing he'd crossed an invisible line. I'm hiding the fact, Kelly continued, her voice tightening with emotion, that sometimes I wonder if the price of all this is worth it, when I have to defend my basic need for privacy to people who should know better. She leaned forward slightly. You have a family, Craig. Would you want every detail of your relationships analyzed by millions of strangers? Craig opened his mouth, but Kelly didn't give him the chance. And you know what else I'm hiding? She said, her voice breaking through the stillness. How disappointed I am right now. I've always respected you. As a journalist, as a person. I thought you understood the difference between real journalism and cheap gossip. I thought you knew me well enough to recognize when you were crossing a line. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of studio lights. The atmosphere was thick, reverent almost. You got your moment. Craig swallowed hard, his confidence stripped away. Kelly, I think maybe I misunderstood. No, Craig, she said quietly, each word deliberate. You understood perfectly. You just chose to ignore it. You wanted a moment, something people would talk about. She paused, her gaze steady, her tone calm but cold. Well, congratulations. You got your moment. The line landed like a hammer. Craig's color drained. His mouth opened as if to apologize. But the words didn't come. Kelly, I never intended... Your intentions don't matter as much as your actions, she said, cutting him off again. And your actions today showed me that you're willing to make your guests uncomfortable for content. That's not journalism, and it's not the person I thought you were. Craig looked like he'd been hit. The weight of her words hung in the air, heavy and unrelenting. He leaned back in his chair, realizing that whatever came next, nothing would undo this moment. The walkout, I think, Kelly said softly, rising from her chair, that this interview is over. The sound of her mic brushing against her jacket filled the silence. Craig stared up at her, his face pale, eyes wide. Kelly, please, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Let's just take a breath. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Sit down, and we can start over. Kelly gave a faint, incredulous smile. Start over? She repeated. Craig, you can't just reset a conversation like it's a computer. You can't unsay the things you said. You can't undo the way you made someone feel. That's not how respect works. The desperation in his tone was unmistakable now. Look, I admit I may have pushed too hard, he said. But that's just good journalism. Sometimes you have to ask tough questions to get to the truth. Kelly let out a quiet, humorless laugh. The truth? She echoed. What truth were you after? Whether or not I'm dating someone? How exactly would that enlighten your audience? Or were you just hoping for something juicy to boost your ratings? A few crew members froze mid-motion. The control room was chaos. Someone whispered urgently into a headset, others gesturing frantically off-camera, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the scene play out. Craig tried one last time, his voice trembling. That's not fair, Kelly. You're making this about ratings when it's really about connecting with our audience. Kelly's eyes met his, calm now, deadly calm. No, Craig, she said quietly. This was never about connection. It was about control. And with that, she unhooked her mic, set it gently on the chair, and walked off the set, leaving silence, shock, and a legacy of television's most uncomfortable 5 minutes in her wake. People relate to you because you've been open about your struggles, Creig said quickly, his voice wobbling between justification and desperation. They want to know how you're doing. Kelly shook her head slowly. Her voice, when she spoke, carried a quiet sadness more devastating than anger. People relate to me because I choose to share my struggles in a way that helps them feel less alone, she said. I share when I'm ready, in my own space, on my own terms. What you tried to do, Creig, wasn't connection. It was extraction. Mining me for content. She began unclipping the small microphone from her jacket. Every movement was deliberate, final. There's a difference between authentic connection and exploitation, she said softly. And apparently you can't see that difference. Creig stood abruptly, panic flickering in his eyes. Kelly, you're being dramatic. This is television. This is what we do. We ask questions, people answer, and everyone moves on. You're acting like I committed some kind of crime. Kelly paused mid-motion and turned to face him fully. A crime? No, Creig. But you did commit something. A betrayal of trust. Her tone was calm, surgical. You took someone who came here in good faith, who trusted you to treat them with respect, and decided your agenda was more important than their dignity. Her words landed like a punch. Creig's face twisted through confusion, realization, then something close to shame. Kelly, that wasn't my intention, he stammered. I keep hearing about your intentions, Kelly said, placing the mic neatly on her chair. But intentions without awareness of impact are meaningless. You intended to do your job, but you didn't consider how your approach might affect me as a person. You wanted good content, but you didn't care about the cost to the person providing it. She looked around the studio, eyes sweeping over the silent crew frozen in disbelief. You know what the saddest part is? She continued. I actually like doing interviews. I like connecting with people, talking about my work. But experiences like this, they make me want to pull back, to retreat, to build walls instead of bridges. Creig's voice was barely above a whisper now. Please, don't let one bad interview change how you approach everything else. Kelly's expression softened, but her resolve stayed unbroken. This isn't about one bad interview, Creig. It's about a culture that treats public figures like they stopped being human the moment they became famous. A culture that thinks fame means consent to invasion. She turned and began walking toward the edge of the set, each step echoing in the silent studio. Creig followed, desperate to regain some control. What do I tell our viewers? He called after her. How do I explain this? Kelly stopped, turned and faced him one last time. Tell them the truth, Creig, she said. Tell them you pushed someone past their comfort zone for the sake of entertainment, and they chose self-respect over your show. Tell them that when you don't respect people's boundaries, sometimes they walk away. Her voice strengthened as she continued. Tell them being famous doesn't mean being available for consumption 24 hours a day. Tell them that celebrities are human beings who deserve the same basic courtesy and respect as anyone else. Creig stood frozen, eyes glistening under the bright studio lights. And tell them, Kelly added, her tone soft but unflinching, that I hope this reminds people that those they watch on television, the ones who make them laugh, who sing for them, who bring a little light into their day, are real people with real families, real struggles, real hearts. She turned and walked off the Today Show set, leaving Creig Melvin standing alone beneath the unforgiving lights, surrounded by stunned crew members and the silence of something irreversible. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of his visible unease as he struggled to process what had just unfolded and how to face the millions who had just witnessed it live. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the hum of the equipment and the distant murmur of the newsroom beyond, unaware that television history had just been made. Craig stood motionless, the full weight of his actions settling in. He looked like a man who had just realized that nothing, not his reputation, not his show, would ever be quite the same again. So, what do you think really pushed Kelly over the edge? Was it Craig's persistence, his dismissive tone, or something deeper about how we treat public figures in our culture? Subscribe for more stories like this. And let me know in the comments what you think was the real breaking point in this unforgettable confrontation.